Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I've long thought that yearbooks should be taken seriously as sources of historic information. This is going to be a semi-interactive presentation in that I will give you dates in order and location, then time to decide what you see. I will then fill in the details. Yearbooks don't always contain the answers to questions they raise. So like many other sources, they often require more research. They also may mislead viewers who have preconceived ideas about various things. Let us proceed. These yearbooks will be at Weed School in Otero County, southern New Mexico from 1952 to 1956 and then 1982. You may not know that in 1903, New Mexico Territory forbade school segregation, but in 1925, the state allowed local option segregation, and southeastern New Mexico, Little Texas, pursued it. In 1952, state education leaders, many World War II veterans, challenged it, and New Mexico beat Brown and Topeka School Board by about a year. In 1951, black kids from a nearby sawmill did not go to school. Their mothers tried to homeschool them. A year of catch-up was carried on by this school. The black teacher came down from Albuquerque. She was with the NAACP. Sawmill workers were peripatetic, so none were around the next 2 years. In 1953, Mom conducted a PTA minstrel show, and I, many years later, asked her why in the world they did that, and she said it was just a custom. They meant no harm by it. By 1954, the school was integrating. The Hispanic students, largely Mexican American, also came from a lumber camp. And by 1956, the black students were back. In 1982, you see this interesting change. By that time, the logging industry had completely disappeared, and so had farming from the mountains. This last group of kids were mostly from ranches to the southeast near Pinon. In 1991, the school was closed. So you saw in this set of slides a great deal of social change and economic change over a period of time in what is essentially a rural area. These are ads in the back of the yearbook. This is one of the ways they paid for yearbooks. And you have on the left 1951, 1956. Why the difference in communities? Well, the answer is infrastructure. A large part of the road to Artesia, even though longer, was paved. The road to Alamogordo was 45 miles of very rough, curvy gravel road. By 56, that had been paved. The distance was half that to Artesia, and things changed. We're now looking at a yearbook set of materials from New Mexico Highlands, New Mexico Highlands Normal, which meant a teacher's college, and then New Mexico Highlands University. Note the social changes in these images, and what is particularly different about the 1963 Highlands yearbook. Contrary to what some people think, Highlands was already integrated by 1940. Probably a good many of the men in this guard picture fought in Europe, not in the Pacific, another thing people don't realize. And you will see in the set of photos one Navajo and several Hispanics. By 1963, the change is quite distinct. What you would not perhaps recognize is that in particularly the upper set of photos, there are several gentlemen who all came from Kentucky and West Virginia to play football at New Mexico Highlands. And a somewhat sad side to the story in some people's minds is they stole a lot of the Spanish girls from that area. Also note the number of women in college in 1940. There were a lot more going to school than many people today think. In fact, as early as 1900, 1/5 of all college graduates were females. And then let us look at an Eastern New Mexico page from 1937 over in Portales. And you see that this group of people are all what we would call Anglo. They come from little towns in eastern New Mexico, which is typical of those schools. And they were mostly studying to become teachers then. And here again, you see lots of women. Now we're going to look at some high school yearbooks. This is the 1928 Santa Fe High yearbook, El Conquistador. The football team, which won the city championship. And some of the students, again, plenty of females getting high school diplomas. They were very social, you might notice, from the clubs and so forth they belonged to. In 2007, this is the Santa Fe High yearbook. Totally different technology for producing yearbooks. It is the Para Mañana, and the mascot is the Demons. In 1927, they had been the Yellow Jackets. In 1928, they became the Demons. And there's an issue here we will pick up later with who they're playing against. And you'll notice the football equipment, how technology is changing sports. This is Portales High School's yearbook, 1927. Note the football equipment, this technological issue again, and there's some health issues involved. Note the teams they could play. All of those teams had to be on a railroad. They did not have school buses. They did not have good roads. That was true for Santa Fe High, for all of the high schools. Now we move to a set of UNM yearbook photos from 1933, 1952, and a little later. Very interesting thing regarding cheerleaders. Even though females were becoming more and more involved in society outside of the home, there were still some attitudes and rules about what they could and couldn't do. And this has changed a great deal later. I threw in the middle picture for a reason. The University of New Mexico was the first college in the whole country to fly to a football game in Montana in 1929. They flew again some in the 1930s, and by the 1950s, it was simply commonplace for them to fly to wherever, including Wyoming. This is also UNM, 1932, 33, and 1963. Again, we see the equipment changes, the size of the team, the number of people, of men going out for football has grown tremendously. You get an idea of who UNM was playing in 63. That will change in future years considerably. And if you have any familiarity with the UNM campus, you are looking at the new Zimmerman Stadium stands, which are now right in the middle of the campus on Central Avenue. This is Alamogordo High School from 1959 down in southern New Mexico. The original Alamogordo High yearbook was called the Sacramento, and the current one is called El Tigre, the Tiger. What in the world is going on here? The rocket you see soaring into the sky on the left is a German V-2 created under the Nazis, being tested at the White Sands Missile Range by the late 1940s, early 50s. Look at the name of the yearbook editor and the woman teacher just to the lower right. And note, by the way, that the colleges the teachers graduated from are all shown in many of these yearbooks. That was very important, very instructive about where teachers were coming from back then. The young lady and the older woman are both Germans, German-born under Hitler. And there were, in that year and the following year, at least 30 students in the high school, all born in Nazi Germany. This had become the beginnings of the American space program down in southern New Mexico. Finally, these are a page from the 1930 New Mexico Military Institute yearbook, and in the center and right, pages from the 56th Fighter Group in England in 1945. And there is the same man in photos on both the left and right. Look closely and you will see R.K. Hill on his horse, a member of the Horse Cavalry with the National Guard at that time as well. You will see his name in the roster of ground crewmen with the 56th, starred. And on the right, you have a photo he had taken of himself loading the machine guns on a P-47 fighter in England. The man above him, a little clearer photo. The 56th became our best fighter group, and in this short span of his lifetime, he transitioned from horse cavalry to the most modern technology of the time. Thank you very much.